He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, this is the Alex Marlow Show. I know if you're watching on the streams, it looks like a hostage video. It is not. I'm on a family vacation, and it does seem like there's enough news going on where I wanted to deliver a show. I did not transport all of my nifty lighting that I use to make me look much better in a home studio, but I want to be able to do shows from anywhere, so it's a good experiment. Experiment's not going great. I brought a fancy microphone with me that's not connecting. So, but hey, you know what? We want to do something. We want to check in and make sure that you're getting the up-to-the-minute news. And we are headed towards a government shutdown. We'll be hours away from it by the time the show comes out. And we're now on Plan C in Mike Johnson's attempt to try to get something passed. And he's not doing a good job satisfying the constituencies that matter the most: President Trump, Republicans, Republican donors, Republican voters. No one seems to be happy right now. I'll tell you where we're at cutting edge from the Breitbart virtual newsroom. On Friday morning, that's today, another plan to avert the shutdown was announced by Johnson. He said, we've got a plan. I tried to get Matt Boyle, our Washington bureau chief, to specify exactly what the plan is for me, and Boyle is as knowledgeable as anyone, and he did not do he wasn't even completely clear himself, but he's expecting to have some votes today. But the House rejected yesterday a short-term bill with Republican leadership scrapping a compromise with Democrats that had a bunch of carve-outs for Democrats. So a lot of Republicans not happy with that, a lot of benefits for Big Pharma. Other controversial stuff, and we wrote up last night that 38 Republicans voted against the bill that was hastily put together. This was the Plan B. This was the second one after the abominable CR that we talked about with Josh Hawley earlier in the week. Trump endorsed the deal, and 9 people didn't vote for it, but I think Trump liked it because it kicked the debt ceiling debate past 2027, and that's really what Trump wants. Trump only wants one thing. He wants the Democrats to lose the debt ceiling as leverage for future negotiations. So he wants the debt ceiling not to be a factor for his administration. So he wants that to get either raised to a point where we don't have to talk about it again or removed entirely. That is the name of the game for President Trump. That's what he wants the most. That was in this bill, so he liked it. But a lot of people didn't like it for various reasons. And it really did seem like there was both flanks of the Republican Party was not into the latest deal. Some of the softies didn't like it, but some of the hardcores didn't like it for a number of reasons as well. We'll get into some of that as well. But the support for the deal, it never really accumulated to a sufficient level. Some people didn't like that this was a compromise with Democrats. Others didn't like the fact that it would have extended the debt ceiling to a unlimited level, people who are more debt hawks and deficit hawks. Trump was not happy that the Plan B did not go through. He said, if there's going to be a shutdown of the government, let it begin now under the Biden administration and not after January the 20th. So Trump doesn't want anything short term that's going to get punted to shortly after he takes office, because then he's going to get much more of the blame. And I think that that's puts in a very messy spot for Republicans, for Trump, and in particular for Speaker Mike Johnson. But this is a total mess, and I'm not confident that they've got a plan, and the government's going to shut down tonight. But basically, they were trying to split different parts of the funding into pieces. Will the Democrats go for that? Typically, they don't go for those sorts of things. They like to pass things in a big lump. Is keeping an eye on Trump and how ticked off Trump is something that's got to concern a lot of Republicans. But there's not a big, clear answer right now to how this is going to go forward. And but the main thing that Trump wants is he wants a long honeymoon. So that means no debt ceiling discussion for a long time. That's what he wants to do. So one thing that's noteworthy is that nothing proposed so far actually cuts spending. Now, they cut in Plan B, they cut the size of the bill by 90% or something, almost 90%, from 1,500 pages down to 100 and something odd pages. That's nice, but there were still tons and tons of spending in it, and it didn't reduce anything. So anyone who's a Republican who is deeply concerned with spending, debt hawks, deficit hawks, they're not going to be happy with this thing. And it is also a lot of the hardcore people still feel like that there was way too much that is that's favorable to Democrats to stay in there. So anyway, this is setting up Johnson to, I think, fail pretty badly. I think that he was in really bad shape earlier in the week, and it's not bucking up for him. And the question is when we get to January the 3rd, when we do not have a Speaker of the House, whether or not Speaker Johnson is still going to be there. So that's it. He's trying to negotiate world peace. This is tough stuff. I understand that. But it's time to start looking at, is there going to be a new speaker coming up? But we will have moment-to-moment updates for you at Breitbart News. I want to give you a flavor of how the debate is taking place in the media. We got some clips here. This is one that's been going around. This is Nicole Maliotakis, not one of the hardcore members of the Republican caucus. Typically someone who goes more with the establishment, though she's got a free mind. I've interviewed her a number of times, but she tends to drift towards the establishment. Here's what she's saying.
Zero communication from leadership to the membership, and it's very frustrating. And something needs to change before January 3rd here. We need a clear understanding of how we're going to do things next session, because what's happening right now is completely unacceptable.
How frustrated are you with Speaker Johnson?
How does it sound?
Sounds pretty frustrated. And that's one of the people that Johnson needs to keep in his corner if he wants to remain the speaker for sure. So, because again, he can't lose many people or else there could be a real leadership challenge. And there's already people wavering. Thomas Massey said he's already out. So if she's outraged, it's a sign that there's probably a lot of people outraged. Matt Boyle, our Washington bureau chief, said that he's hearing as high as 25 Republicans are already out on Johnson for Speaker January 3rd. And that number is changing minute to minute. And you never know. Johnson has a knack for sticking around and surviving stuff. I didn't think he'd make it as long as he has. And he's, going to UFC fights with the coolest people in the world, with Trump and Vance and Robert Kennedy and Dana White and all that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe Johnson is more clever than we think. But Trump wants to be able to come back and offer tax cuts. That's the deal. He wants to come back, get sworn in, and his top priorities are going to be tax cuts. It's going to be border. But the bottom line is that he wants to be able to have some room to potentially raise the debt short term. So a lot of Republicans don't like that. They don't get the math on this. They don't get the logic. They're not willing to go along with it. One such guy is Chip Roy, who is just completely on fire on the House floor. I'm going to play this clip.
That's what's going to happen right here by Republicans, increasing the debt $5 trillion. And what are you doing in the same bill? $110 billion unpaid for. Because you never have any ounce of self-respect to go out and campaign saying you're going to balance the budget, and then you come in here and pass $110 billion unpaid for. On top of the $200 billion you did for WEP, you guys won't agree with that. But the fact of the matter is $330 billion. Congratulations, you've added to the debt since you were given the majority again on November 5th. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. Yes, I think this bill is better than it was yesterday on certain respects. But to take this bill yesterday and congratulate yourself because it's shorter in pages, but increases the debt by $5 trillion is asinine.
It's good. So there's some good points in there. I just don't like that he's yelling. It's just, you guys know I hate that stuff. You don't have to yell at us. We're smart people. He's yelling at Republicans, by the way. He's not yelling at the Democrats there. But he's a guy who supported Ron DeSantis, which is like kryptonite for Donald Trump. And he backed Liz Cheney. So Trump would love to see him primaried. But it's not just people who don't like, who are debt deficit hawks, who are opposed to this. It's people who have no confidence, who basically want to voice a no confidence vote in Johnson. That's a huge thing. So if any of the guys you like voted no on this Plan B, then it's possibly not because they thought it was so bad. It's because they just don't want to tolerate Johnson anymore. They want to set up Johnson to get ousted, and they want to have it so that he resigns. So then you don't have to have some sort of they would like it for it not to go to a vote. I think that's the big deal. They would like for it not to go all the way to a vote. I'm going to give you some of the Democrats' talking points right now. We've got Hakeem Jeffries, who's the leader of the Democrat Party right now in the House. Let's hear this.
Republicans are marching America to a painful government shutdown that will crash the economy and hurt working class Americans because they would rather enact massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors than fund cancer research for children.
Tax cuts wouldn't just be for billionaire donors, obviously. The billionaires are really clever at figuring out how to not pay that much taxes. The billionaires are doing fine. They don't need any more tax cuts. That's not what it's about. And we're not trying to get in the way of cancer research. Since when is cancer research just dependent on the government doing this bloated CR? And if people are so persuaded on that, why did they vote for the other guys? But him saying it's going to crash the economy, that's what I wanted to highlight here, because it's just not true. John Carney wrote this up at Breitbart News for us, or Breitbart Business Digest. Shutting down the government cost the economy almost nothing. There's no reason to fear a shutdown, he writes. And he calculated that the 5-week shutdown in 2018, which was the longest in recent memory, so 35 days is how long it took place. And this was, you might remember this because Trump wanted $5 billion for the border wall. $5 billion. It ended up costing our economy about $11 billion in output. So that's something like an hour and a half of what our economy, it takes our economy about an hour and a half to be able to produce that amount of money. So the economy basically lost about an hour and a half worth of work over the 5-week shutdown. And let's keep in mind that it is government workers, if they're driving our economy to that level, isn't that disturbing? Isn't that a reason why we shouldn't overly fear a shutdown? Shutdown never go well for Republicans in the media. So I'm not rooting for it. I got to admit. Because we always end up losing that fight in the media. And it does. We just got power back. And even though we haven't assumed power yet, so Chip Roy's actually helping Democrats with that talking point, saying that we got power back. Well, we don't have it back yet. We get it back next month. So the point is that the economy is not going to suffer from a shutdown. We will probably suffer from the media, but people are being ignorant if they're not understanding what's going on the Republican side. Trump, who we elected, has one ask. That ask is he does not want to have the debt ceiling interfere with his agenda. That's all he wants. And I understand. I completely understand it. So knives are out for Johnson. Rand Paul saying if Johnson had a spine, he would have offered a bill that cuts spending. It's a great point. Like, why don't we cut any spending? Bradley Jay, one of our Capitol Hill reporters, one of our best guys at Breitbart, offers up a story. Shark circle embattled Speaker Mike Johnson. Speaker Johnson in uncharted waters, he writes, the deal he negotiated with Democrats failed to get a vote amid Republican outrage in all corners of the conference. He goes on to enumerate a lot of rumblings in Washington that there's zero communication and something's got to change. Massey's already out on him. Rich McCormick, Republican from Georgia, said he would oppose Johnson. He really can't lose that many people or else he's gone. And once he hits critical mass, then he will probably have to just step aside and then we'll start fresh. So the interesting thing is, I admit, Johnson is a villain right now. The Democrats are in total disarray. There's no compelling Democrat villains right now. They even kept AOC off the, what did she want? Oversight? Anyway, she had a big committee chairmanship she wanted, and she got her butt kicked by Democrats. So she's not going to get that, or at least to be the ranking member over there. So it's who are bad guys now? And say we don't have as many bad guys. So, of course, we're going to fight amongst ourselves. That's what happens. And Johnson's the easy target. So I'm not rooting for or against Johnson, though. You guys heard me say I think he should go. Jim Jordan should be the speaker. It looks like maybe Emmer's got the inside track to be speaker, which wouldn't be bad. It's fine with me. I can handle that. But it's not really the point. The point is that are we going to be starting with a nice fresh slate when Trump comes in? Or are we going to be heading towards another one of these government shutdown battles where Schumer and the Democrats have leverage against Trump's agenda because of the debt ceiling? And not because of Trump spending, because Trump wants to cut taxes. And there's a delay, there's a lag in terms of the accounting done by the federal government to catch up with whichever agenda the person who's in power implements. So anyway, bad week for Johnson heading in towards Christmas. Who knows? But government will be shut down tonight. I will tell you that I'm going to do some shows next week. I want to keep them interview focused just because Christmas week, give you something a little lighter to chew on, but we'll be here for you if things get really wild in Washington. All right, another talking point Democrats are doing is they're trying to frame it as though Elon Musk is actually the president or the president-elect. A lot of President Musk chatter. It's all over the place. It's completely flooding social media. We've got some audio of this. Here's, I guess this is Chris Murphy doing it. Let's play it.
Trump seemed to be on board with the bill, but then when Musk opposed it, Trump followed suit. So that, to me, is a pretty clear story. The people you have to negotiate with, if you are Republican leadership in the House or the Senate, is not the incoming president of the United States. It's his billionaire overlords.
Yeah, this is just not how it went down. Musk came out. I said this earlier in the show, didn't I? That Musk came out and he said anyone who votes for the original CR is going to get primary in 2 years. And then his own audience got on his case on X. People like Breitbart. We were saying, no, that's not what we're doing. We're shutting this down now. We're going to get a different bill. And then we're going to remove Johnson by January the 3rd. So that's what happened. And then Musk all of a sudden got a lot tougher. And then the bill died. So what they're doing here is trying to drive a wedge between Trump and Musk. And I knew this would happen. I said this weeks ago, because if Musk and Trump get along, it's a very powerful alliance because Musk is now not just the richest person in the world, but he's also the most powerful person in media. So his obsessive X account posting, the fact that he controls the algorithm, it is the fact that he owns all these big companies, that he's sort of fearless and a little bit goofy. He's a very compelling media person in a million ways. So that alliance between him and Trump is immeasurably powerful, and so they have to try to shut it down. So we've seen this playbook before. They did this with Steve Bannon. Do you remember this? They're putting Steve on the cover of, I think it was Newsweek, calling him the shadow president, and acting like Steve was, secretly trying to run the White House or running the White House. Going around Trump on certain things, trying to undermine Trump. And then it worked. And Steve got pushed out. So I don't know if Steve wanted to leave or not. He probably did. Probably got very hostile for him inside. But once Trump started to read articles, Steve Bannon's really the president, then they drove a wedge between Steve and Trump. They're doing this again with Musk. Exact same thing. The good news is I don't think we're being fooled by this. I don't think anyone in this audience is hearing this and hearing anything surprising at all. I think all of you are hearing exactly what you would have anticipated because you're all smart people. But just don't fall for it. I mean, it's happening on CNN. It's happening on other places. But I don't think this is going to hold. I think Trump is going to understand it, and I think Musk understands it. So, and this might have not been the best example because I don't think Musk killed this bill. I think Musk was very vocal on X that this bill was bad, but we were all vocal on X this bill was bad. So it's funny to act like Musk is the shadow president in light of the fact that we had this big Wall Street Journal report that the White House, everyone was aware that Joe Biden was senile when he was inaugurated in the White House, and they had to work around it. It's a 23-minute listen if you were to listen to this article. Aides kept meetings short and controlled access. Top advisors acted as go-betweens, and public interactions became more scripted. The administration denied Biden had declined. I mean, this is just the absurdity of this. I'm getting really, I don't think I understand this, why everyone's acting like it was a surprise that Biden's senile and demented. Of course he was senile and demented when he took office. I'm kind of surprised that this is the talking point, that this was some sort of a big cover-up. I don't think it was a cover-up at all. I think everyone knew. So I don't know. That narrative has never resonated with me, that this is the biggest scandal in the history of American politics, that everyone knew Joe Biden was senile and no one said anything. We all knew. We all watched it. I wrote a whole book. It's called Breaking Biden. Did very well. Made the New York Times bestseller list. And I said categorically he was of declining mental capacity. But that was like a throwaway line of the book. The point was it didn't matter if he was of declining mental capacity or not. It's that he had accumulated tons of power and was wielding it in a horrible way. So whether or not he's making every decision or delegating it, whether or not he's showing up in a million different places and doing a bunch of interviews, or whether or not he's keeping a tight schedule so that he could rest, it didn't make a difference. He was doing immeasurable amounts of damage when he was working. There's a culture in this country where there's sort of workaholic culture. I think workism, is that what they're calling it? Where people just feel there's a point of pride of working constantly. And I have a bit of it, to be honest with you. I'm always busy and I never sit down. I just made a joke to my wife that I haven't sat down in 7 years and I would like to sit down. And not sitting like this, like I'm sitting now, but I'm sitting in a comfy chair and just thinking. I don't have time to do that. There's always something to do. But it's interesting as a culture that we pride ourselves in that it doesn't really matter if you're getting done important things. A lot of people now I just read this story earlier today about how Elon Musk, people are criticizing him for being an absentee at work. He's not showing up at work. Let's see if I can pull this up. I thought I set this aside. I set the notes aside to make it smooth. Shareholders are angry that the CEO is not at work. This is in the Express US for Tesla. Well, Tesla seems to be doing okay. I mean, they've got all the driverless car deaths. That's not good. But they're still popular. SpaceX is doing really good. Catching rocket sticks with those 2 chopsticks flying around. That was pretty cool. So it doesn't really matter how much he's at work. It matters is, does his job get done in the amount of time he's there? I think a lot of jobs, it takes 100 hours a week. I understand that. Some jobs don't. They really don't. So I think it's a very interesting thing is that Biden didn't need 100 hours a week to ruin the country. That's my point. He didn't need to be a sound mind and body to ruin the country. He's ruining the country with the amount of time he's putting in. All right. Another one that's interesting. I'll give you a sneak peek of this. If you saw my Kudlow appearance yesterday, showed up on Kudlow again. And a good solo hit. I got 3 solo hits in a row now. That's good. We like that. We like the solo hits. Moving up in the world. I would talk about Luigi Mangione, who is the alleged killer of the United Healthcare CEO. Rich guy who killed this guy in cold blood, even though he never denied him healthcare. And he got canonized online. People are making now fan art, treating him like a saint. Crazy stuff. Media Research Center has a report more that are 20% of U.S. adult citizens view Mangione favorably. Murdered someone in cold blood who didn't do anything to him at all. Vigilante justice. We're sick people. We have demonic people in our society, and they're apparently wielding a lot of power. But now that they've said that this is an act of terrorism, so this would make a special condition to make him eligible for the death penalty. And my comment on Kudlow was that our options here are either he is put down like a dog. If he's convicted, for the lawyers out there, he's got to get convicted first. So if he's innocent, he's innocent. But if he's convicted, then we either put him down like a dog, or we spend the rest of our lives hearing about the fact that he got love letters and marriage proposals. And you get all those podcasts of true crime stuff about him, and he just is elevated with some sort of heroic status in society so other people can make money off of him and have some sick fantasies fulfilled. And is that good for us as a people? Of course, I think the answer is no. I don't believe that all murderers should live. I'm not saying we have to execute everyone, but I'm saying that there's some murderers that when you shoot a guy in the back who's got a wife and kids who did nothing to you in cold blood in the middle of the street, might be a good case for putting him down. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that, but it's just the 20% view him favorably. Unbelievable, especially with the contrast of Daniel Penny stuff that was going on, how everyone freaked out about him. All right, other news items that are out there. Pentagon reveals it actually has 2,000 troops in Syria, not 900, so they have more than double what had originally been reported. Are you paying attention? Got the coup in Syria. Joe Biden takes credit for it. We have no idea if Christians are going to be genocided, how bad things can get. And now we learn that the Pentagon had basically lied to us and has more than doubled the troops there than we thought. So this is the exact type of stuff that at a minimum we need accountability, and at a minimum we need people to explain to us what is going on. The Pentagon press secretary, Brigadier General Pat Ryder, characterized the higher troop count as a surprise. Surprise? How could that be a surprise? Isn't the Pentagon press secretary, should that be the exact guy to know how many people are there? All right. I'm not saying Assad was a good guy. I'm not saying that we don't want a peace through strength approach. I'm not saying that we can't have a single troop deployed anywhere. I'm just saying that this type of lying is what is really, really, I think this is really what lowers the public trust. Speaking of lowering the public trust, the FAA is now going to ban drones over parts of New Jersey and New York. We still don't have answers on the drones. All those drones, it won't tell us what's going on. They've kind of slowed down, which has got to lead you to believe the government was clearly aware of it because we're not seeing these sightings anymore. So if it was hobbyists, if it was just people flying their drones around to cause problems, wouldn't we have heard about it? If it was aliens, wouldn't they have continued also probably? So it's probably something the government was aware of, as we kept saying, and they won't tell us. But New York is going for a critical infrastructure site ban for drones. They declared this today as we're recording it Friday. FAA has reserved the right to use deadly force against drones. Kathy Hochul said the actions are precautionary. There are no threats from these drones, but then we're still going to ban them and you can still shoot them down, but they're not really threatening. Okay, that makes sense. We have not detected any public safety threats. We will continue to aggressively monitor the situation as we call on Congress to pass legislation to give states and local law enforcement the authority and resources they need to manage this evolving technology. Wow. Thank you. Thanks for nothing. Okay, this is what I'm talking about with Biden getting a lot done with still keeping a low profile. He has, on Friday, he's announced federal student loans that he has nationalized 50,000 more. So he's canceling 55,000 student loans through programs as public service loan forgiveness. So he's canceled an unprecedented $180 billion in federal student loans through existing programs during his term for 4.9 million Americans. It's just one of his things he does. He loves canceling student loans. Obviously inflationary, but it's a way for Democrats to target people who are liberals who are in massive amounts of debt. This is a really interesting subset of the culture. Liberals who took on mountains and mountains of student loans and got their degrees, they got out in the working world, they didn't make any money because now they can't pay back their loans. And if they can, it takes at least 10 years, maybe it takes 20 years because the amount of money they accumulated was not correlated to them getting a better job. The thought of student loans initially, you would think, was I'm going to get this degree, I'm going to get my piece of paper, and then I'm going to be of a higher value in the workforce. Well, that's not so much the case how it worked out. It didn't really work out that way. People took on these loans, and if they got them in the liberal arts, which the degrees cost the same in terms of time and money as STEM degrees, science, technology, engineering, math. And now you've got a mountain of debt that you got to pay down, and you've got a job that caps out at a very low rate. And then things get more expensive. Things get inflated. The cost of living in our major cities where a lot of these liberals congregate is even higher still. And you're in a bind. And it leaves the Democrats with a very vulnerable voter base there. Because as people wisen up to the fact that they got lied to with these student loan programs, that they were all basically kickbacks to create slush funds at our universities. Why do these universities need billion-dollar endowments? They're just basically hedge funds that they can invest and then grow. That's what these endowments all are, essentially. So you borrow from the government to get a degree that is not worth that in the free market, in the marketplace. And then your life is set back immeasurably to try to pay down this stuff, and the degree you got doesn't help you make money. Meanwhile, the universities are fat and happy, and they donate big checks to Democrats. You see this? Do you see the math on this? So he's got to do something. Democrats do. And so they're trying to forgive as many loans as they can. So an act of Christmas charity, Simon Kent wrote for us at Breitbart News. Yeah, right, exactly. So $4.28 billion, we call it nationalizing and not forgiveness because it's not that the money doesn't get paid. It just gets paid by everyone. It gets paid by you, the taxpayers. And he does all this stuff while the Wall Street Journal is writing he's really demented and barely the president. Got it. All right. Where are we at? I ain't got any more audio I want to play. I don't think so. I think, yeah, let's do some mail. I got some mail. Got a bunch of mail set aside for today. Let's see. So, also, I've been checking out your comments on Rumble and YouTube as well. So thank you for that. Anything you guys do to leave a comment, engage with the content, very helpful to me. Anything helps us grow. We're trying to create energy, momentum. I got some good news from Salem. We're going to be expanding the show in one way next month. So more updates for you as the details get locked in on that. But very good. We just want this thing, the biggest show in the world. It's all we ask. I will say before I get into the mail, January 20th is the day and Washington, D.C. is the place. And that's when and where Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. And we at Salem, we want to send you there. You can win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP experience to extend the inauguration, attend the inauguration. Extend the inauguration. That'd be nice. A long inauguration. You can attend it in Washington, D.C. Airfare is included. 3-night stay in our nation's capital. Tickets for the inauguration itself, and much more. I want to hear about the much more. Misty, let's ask. What's in the much more? So don't miss this extraordinary opportunity to celebrate the greatness, history, and excitement of a presidential inauguration. And to enter, you can just click the link below in the show notes. So everywhere you get your podcast or show notes, you can get it there. Or go to salempodcastnetwork.com/Trump. That's salempodcastnetwork.com/Trump. There's no reason not to do this. It is the marquee event on a social calendar. It comes up every 4 years, and we only win half the time or so. So if you can win this, there is absolutely no reason not to try. All right, let's read some mail. I think that would be a nice activity for now. All right. Ginger Lee writes, good episode. Thank you. I don't know which episode I pulled this. Sorry, Ginger. Our legislators have really betrayed America first, the American people, and President Trump. We must not allow President Trump to be handicapped at the outset of his term. I pray God works through this situation and moves our legislators to do the right thing. Too much harm has already been done by the disastrous Biden regime. So we're talking about the bills. I'm assuming she's talking about the Hawley episode. Josh Hawley interview, very good. But yeah, that's the whole point, is that if we don't extend the debt ceiling or blow up the debt ceiling, then Trump is going to be hampered in his negotiations with Schumer. That's it. So if you're purely a Trump person and in Trump's corner and trust Trump on everything, that's where you net out. Now, I try to be a little more subtle than that in the analysis I'm bringing to the show with you. So one of the things for me that I'm concerned about is if we don't have a debt ceiling or it never comes up, then we never talk about the debt. And we have to, because it's going to be a big problem. I'm not saying it's a massive problem yet. It's a minor problem for sure. But it could get worse as time goes on, because eventually the interest on the debt is going to make up too much of our budget. And it's also game on in terms of spending for both parties. Both parties have a much harder time cutting than they have spending. That's why I'm so hopeful for Doge in this initiative. But it is, it's going to be hard work. It's going to be hard work to cut enough. All right, Parapause writes, Alex, thanks for pointing out dinosaur media folded their tent quickly on the ABC lying about Trump. Despite President Trump being a public figure and the threshold for proving slander was higher, they ran and quickly for settlement, realizing how naked their exposure was. Well done, Mr. MAGA. As always, appreciate your analysis. Yeah, so this is talking about ABC News and Stephanopoulos settling with Trump. And what that did, even though Stephanopoulos called Trump a rapist, which he's not on air, which is clearly defamatory, seems like should be illegal. But they settled, and so that means that ABC doesn't have to go through any sort of discovery, which really would have been the big deal, because if Trump lawyers had access to all of these emails, then we could see the extent that the network was colluding with Democrats. And we know that they were. We know that they were trying to sabotage Trump. This is very clear. And this is why I think Trump wants to sue the Ann Seltzer and the whatever the publication is in Iowa. Because I think he wants the access to the emails. one more email of these people saying, oh, yeah, of course, we got to put this out because it's so great for Democrats. One congratulations or one just this is amazing that could be out there in email where you see the newsrooms acting as arms of the DNC and the Democrat Party and the Kamala Harris apparatus and the Joe Biden apparatus, then that really does help us clarify the American public that the fake news is the enemy of the people. So that's what Trump wanted, and that's why they rushed to a settlement for sure. So I'm kind of sad that they took the settlement in a way now. Now I wish they'd make it go all the way to trial, but maybe Trump just wants to focus on governing, so I get it. All right, Bill Bailey writes, Alex, congratulations to Dr. Marlow, Mrs. Dr. Marlow. She's known on the show. As a cancer survivor, I spent several years in the care of great doctors. The yearly follow-up has been greatly appreciated. Dr. Mashni, thank you. You saved my life. Dr. Wood, thank you. My primary doctor, Dr. Rajesh, you are the best. Prayers for a great career, Mrs. Marlow, and the folks you heal. Thank you. It's just nice when you guys send me nice personal notes. I read them all, and they mean a lot. That's why I read some of them on the show. I mentioned earlier in the week Mrs. Dr. Marlow passing her oncology boards, so on the road to being Surgeon General. So, and maybe a cool TV doctor. You got to do that first. It seems like the way to get people's attention. Be a TV doctor. Yeah, but now she's treating cancer in our community, and that's her job day to day. And I think about it quite a bit whenever I'm complaining about what I have to do at work, which is rare. I like what I have to do at work, but it makes you think. And it's also noteworthy that everyone tends to like their doctors, and we all hate the healthcare system, and we don't say nice stuff about doctors, and we talk about them in the press as if they're just all salespeople, and they've just been lying to us and trying to keep us sick, which is the famous talking point. We do sick care. We don't do health care. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a grain of truth to some of it, but we all like our doctors, right? They all seem to be trying their best, try to take care of us. It's a very long road. Mrs. Dr. Marlow is 38 years old and, just got her first big girl paycheck a couple of months ago. I don't mean that in a condescending way. I'm just saying that it's a long, long road. It's a decade and a half of preparation to get ready to have that amount of knowledge. So anyway, I ride for doctors, and not to say we can't clean up public health, which is horrible. Not to say I like the pharmaceutical companies. They're horrible, all that stuff. They do save a lot of lives, though, but they do a lot of horrible stuff in between. All right, fun conversation. Next up, this is Susan Wallet. I'm going to say Wallet. That's better. Susan Wallet from Pittsburgh. Hi, Alex. I sent you an email yesterday, but forgot to ask if the ACLU files lawsuits regarding deportations of illegals. Can this delay and tie the hands of Tom Homan? This is a compelling question, and we just had some reporting on this at Breitbart News. The ACLU is advising cities now and states on how to help illegals evade deportation. They're so in your face, the American Civil Liberties Union. They're advising cities and states. We had John Binder write this up for us at Breitbart News a couple of days ago. But Trump, of course, has Tom Homan, the border czar, on the case. And his goal is to carry out the largest deportation in the history of the country. Obviously, we got the most illegal aliens by a mile. And a lot of people do not have any legitimate means to be here or reason to be here. And the goal is to deport millions of them. So deportation orders are coming down, and ACLU Executive Director Anthony Romero told Rachel Maddow, so it shows you who they're messaging to. They're messaging to the hard left that the organization has a game plan that centers on how best to pressure and advise city and state officials on helping illegal aliens evade deportation. So they got a whole plan. They're calling it a firewall for freedom. No, it's a firewall for evading the law and degrading this country, really. So they want to get local enforcers involved because if they can convince local governments to not provide cops and jail space to do raids and logistics, if mayors and governors and city councilors can comply with the far left activists, then it'll be much more difficult, if not impossible, for ICE to get done the amount of deportations the goal is to get done. So just note how the left is thinking, that they are putting time, resources, energy into allowing people to stay here illegally. So, good question. Glad you brought it up. We'll have to do a lot more immigration content as it becomes front and center on the show. All right, there's a second part to Susan's question. Another question, can Trump reverse the ridiculous executive orders and recent aid to some of the foreign countries, for example, Africa? Now, One of the natures of executive orders is that they're by and large temporary. I'm not saying that there aren't some exceptions I'm not thinking of at the moment, but by and large, they're temporary and can be reversed by the next administration, which is why it is quite risky for Republicans and conservatives to rely on too many executive orders. Just is. Because if we ever lose, then we can have the executive order overturned. So the executive order about Africa, this is one where I think it was only $1 billion. I don't really know what Biden was up to. It's humanitarian aid to displaced Africans. That is, I'm pulling this up now. This is from earlier in the month. He made a speech at the National Museum of Slavery in Luanda, Angola, announcing $1 billion for people who are displaced from homes by droughts and lack of food. So it's a global warming thing. That's what he's talking about. So the reason to give foreign aid is to get stuff in return. It's not for it to be a welfare program for the third world. That's not the point of foreign aid. So if there's some sort of intelligence or cooperation or access to resources that can help us grow that we're getting for the billion, then fine, it's $1 billion. Just leave it. But we know that's not what it's going to be. And that's why there needs to be a big audit on what's in the books. It takes a while to deploy this amount of money, so I don't know if Trump can reverse this one in time. But it's really important to do a periodic audit of where our foreign aid is going. I'm not a negative foreign aid guy or don't do it, but I do know that it's probably being abused more often than not. We need to be getting stuff in return. You have foreign aid to Israel, you're benefiting from their intelligence, which is pound for pound better than ours. That's a great reason to do it. So you give that's why we probably give foreign aid to hostile regimes around the world as well, just to get info for it. It's just a fundamental thing. It's one of these questions that I brought up on the show over the years, my various shows, and I don't know why it doesn't come up more in general. That shouldn't there be a quo? The quid is you get money. The quo is you give us something that's clear to the American public in return, be it intelligence, cooperation, access to the economic benefits. So it is treated now as foreign aid, which I don't know why. Welfare. Great question. Breaking news as this is happening at the end of the show, in Germany, a driver plows a car into a Christmas market. At least one dead, 60 injured, suspects from Saudi Arabia. This has happened in the past in Europe. It's why you need to keep immigration under control. Immigration needs to be checked. You need to know who's coming in and out of your country. You should not have anyone enter your country who is capable of plowing into a Christmas market in a car, killing people, and making it so that it sows national discord on what should be joyous occasions. It is the most important issue you can have. I mean, right up there with limited government. Those are the two. You need to have a strong border to have any law and order in the society. If you don't have a strong border, then you're inviting chaos. All right, Breitbart.com all weekend for all the latest as the government hurdles towards a shutdown. We will have shows for you next week. I don't know what form they will take, what shape they will take, but sending me emails at aloha@alexmarlow.com, leaving comments, sharing our content, all of that helps me immeasurably. I can't thank you enough. Have a great rest of your weekend. Happy Hawaiian Shirt Friday. Thanks to our producer, Misty. Oh, over on the Breitbart Fight Club, John Carney and Matt Boyle went at it today, talking about some of the details of the economy and the government shutdown, the way debt and deficit relate to our government and its function. I have not checked it out yet. I can't wait to check it out. I got a stand-in today, which was so that I could be with family a little bit extra, but I still wanted to make time for the Alex Marlow Show audience, which I've done. And that's it for today. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for watching or listening.